Okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you for coming, being punctual. We're a minute behind, but I'll try and catch up with good case management. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Matt Malloy. I'm chair of the CIC ADR Management Board. Sounds very grand. It isn't. But I'll tell you a little bit about the CIC. So it's the Construction Industry Council. It is a cross-industry body. It's effectively a membership organisation, but it has the members are sort of the construction professions and also some universities, and we have corporate members and such like. The real purpose of the CIC ADR Management Board, so ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, is really to give guidance along the in that area to the industry. So what we're looking at is sort of best practice. The group that I lead is made up of members or representatives from members who are involved with dispute resolution with those organisations, but also other organisations that deal with dispute resolution in the construction industry. So, for example, and this evening's a good example, CEDR, the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, aren't exclusive to construction industry, but they are big players in the field of dispute resolution, and we collaborate and we work with them, so hence they are here, and they've been very supportive in some of the initiatives that we run. So the purpose of today, I'm going to go back, that's the timetable. The purpose today really is to sort of help those construction industry professionals who might be interested in a career or developing their career in dispute resolution space. We've chosen to work with three main areas. So we're going to look at mediation, we're going to look at arbitration, we're going to look at adjudication, and then we're going to look at other roles that you might be able to fulfill in or undertake in the dispute resolution space. So the way it's going to work is I'm going to moderate, I'm going to ask some questions of our panellists, and I'll introduce them in a minute. And then we'll run for about an hour, and then we'll open it up to sort of questions. And the idea really is for you to sort of hear from the horse's mouth in terms of the individuals who are working within organisations that train and provide work for people in the construction industry who might work in dispute resolution, ask questions, and also have the opportunity afterwards to ask questions. There will be some information that you'll be all emailed after the event, giving you links to the various organisations and what they're doing. So what I'm going to do is try and get the order right. So Susan Franken, to my immediate left, is the immediate past chair of the Adjudication Society. She's dual qualified as an engineer and a barrister, experienced dispute resolver, and here this evening really to help us with her experiences, not just with adjudication, but other sort of aspects of dispute resolution. To her left is Richard Nunn. He's from CEDR. CEDR probably were the forefathers, if that's the right term, of mediation in the UK. I think they were the first organisation. Since then, there are other organisations, and we'll deal with that. But Richard has been, and CEDR in particular, have been involved with some of the, not just mediation, but helping us with some of the low-value dispute schemes and some of the consumer-type complaint schemes. And we'll talk about that as a potential for people to get experience in dispute resolution space. To his left is Natasha Davis. She's from the Institute of Civil Engineers, works again in the dispute resolution service, so we'll have first-hand knowledge of the criteria, the requirements to become a dispute resolver, and I think administering the panels and that type of thing. To her left is Kristen Bauer from the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. Kristen's going to give us an insight on how the various pathways to membership fit within mediation, arbitration, and adjudication routes. So how you could maybe do training to become member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, that type of thing, and also talk about their experience as a organisation. And then to her left is Raj Sohal, who has had many hats with the RICS and has been there as long as I think I've been a member of the RICS. But now is head of education, has been involved heading up the DRS team, but education in the DRS space. So in particular, they roll out training courses for each of the disciplines that we're looking at. And if anybody has been reading the King's College Adjudication Society report, you'll see that they are a significant nominating body. I think 60% of the nominations of adjudications go through the RICS. So they have a significant presence in that space. So that's a little bit about them. I do them a bit of a disservice. I just didn't want to embarrass them, and also didn't want to sort of borrow time. So we're going to go working in 3 15-minute slots. We're going to go mediation, adjudication, arbitration, and then other areas. I'm going to ask you to sort of watch, observe, make a note of any questions that you want to put to the panel. We will do that at the end, and we'll have hopefully 20 minutes, half an hour of questions and discussions. For all of you, we are filming, and there will be, we'll publish that on a CIC YouTube channel afterwards. The camera will be looking at us, not you, but your voice might be identifiable. So just think about that before. I think we can edit at a request, but yeah, just sort of think about age-appropriate questions and comments are probably the best way to think about it. So kicking off with mediation, and I'm going to go to Richard just because they've probably been doing it the longest. But what I'm interested in, if somebody comes to you and says, "Well, I want to become a mediator with CEDR," what would be the path and criteria that you look at?
Thanks, Matt. Can everyone hear me, or should I use microphone? Hello? Okay. So how do you become a mediator? Well, the first thing you need to do if you want to become a mediator with CEDR is to take our mediation skills training course, which is... I think we've been training mediators for over 30 years. We've trained mediators in about 70 countries, so it's a well-recognised and reputable accreditation. It's a very intensive course. It's over 5 days, and it is a mix of training, role plays, and assessments as well. After you complete the course, there is then a written assignment that you need to complete, and it is these are assessed, and hopefully, if you're successful in terms of timelines, you probably find out. I think it's about 4 weeks after the submission of the written assessment. So that is how you become a mediator, and then you are an accredited mediator. You can say you are an accredited mediator with CEDR to the world. What do you then do with that mediation accreditation? It is post the course. You will have an opportunity to observe a mediation with a CEDR mediator. And there are also, CEDR uses our mediation skills training course to identify talent for mediators who may want or we would like to join our panels in the future. And Matt mentioned earlier on, we have consumer schemes, which, for example, conciliation schemes, which is similar to mediation, but over about 3 hours, often with sort of phone diplomacy, shuttling between the business and the consumer, which gives people an opportunity to practice and hone the skills that you learn on the mediation training course. I would say the course is demanding. It's great fun. There is some pre-reading to do. You have reading every night because there are role plays and information that you are given every day. So it's something that you do need to prepare for. But I have done the course. I've got colleagues here who have done the course. It is very enjoyable, and you will make friends and contacts from the people you work with on the course as well. So it is. We like to think it's the gold standard of mediation training courses. how do you then become a mediator and join our panel? Well, there are certain additional criteria, including to have done about 10 mediations as lead mediator. You will need to be registered with the Civil Mediation Council. You will need to have a level of insurance as well. CEDR runs an application process to join our panels, which opens usually in late June each year. And so there is links which I think will be available in literature, and you can use those to put your CV forward and express an interest if you are indeed looking to be a mediator on a CEDR panel.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, I've seen the training, been through the training actually that's available. And one thing, and I'm going to come to Raj on this in terms of, so the traditional mediation model is very much facilitative. So that basically means you're not giving an opinion. The RICS, I think, I'm not sure if anybody else does it, but you have an evaluative mediation course. And I'm just thinking of what was the rationale for that, and how does the training differ?
Well, I'm hoping everybody can hear me. So the reason why we've done it is we actually embarked on the whole mediation training side of things was because our membership, we were actually batting people off to other organisations and they wanted RICS to do the training. And that's where we started. But as we were running the training, we obviously have got sector specialists doing the mediations, and we were finding that they were giving not opinions so much, but they were using their sector knowledge to help the parties come to some sort of resolution. So, you know, whether it's measurement or, you know, whatever the area of specialism were, they were using that. So what we decided to do was we run the facilitative training. So we do the 40 hours training that is required by the Civil Mediation Council. But in addition to that, we have embedded in a facilitative approach to mediation, whereby the specialist is using their knowledge and expertise to help the parties come to some sort of resolution. And it was really reacting to what was actually happening out there in the marketplace. So we wanted to really see, as we were delivering the mediation training, we were seeing this is what is happening, and so this is how we need to react. And that was really the main reason behind it.
Presumably, one of the criteria, if you want an evaluative mediator, they need to know their onions in terms of the industry. So you're presumably a prerequisite would be
yes.
An evaluative mediator in whether it's property or built environment. You'll be looking for that expertise. So yeah. I'm going to go to Kristen now. So I'm just interested. So if I wanted to be a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, can I do that through the mediation training route? And so I'm just interested in that.
Sure, thanks, Matt. Yes, you can. The short answer is yes, although for those of you who aren't familiar with the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, or Ciarb, we're a global membership organization that is set out to promote kind of all forms of alternative dispute resolution. So although arbitration is in our name, we have training and assessment and membership for arbitration, mediation, and adjudication. So for all three, it's quite a similar sort of structure. So it's sort of helpful to note that our training and qualification is really designed to have sort of different levels to meet you at wherever you are in your dispute resolution career journey. So whether you're simply interested in learning about it and you want to become that kind of entry-level member at associate level, or if you're, you know, in the early stages of building your dispute resolution career and you're sort of advanced into more what we call membership level, which is a little bit confusing, but it's associate level, membership level, and then fellowship level. So the fellowship level is for those of you who already work as a mediator, as a neutral, and you're interested in sort of developing your practice and furthering your career. So for mediation, we offer 3 routes to membership, kind of at those different levels. So we have an assessment route, which means you're taking Ciarb training courses and being assessed, and kind of going through the pathway through the assessment route. We also have an experience route. This is for folks who are already mediating. They're already experienced neutrals, and therefore they don't necessarily need the kind of education and training aspect, but they're looking for more career advancement, and so you have an entryway through that experience route. And the third route is probably less applicable to this group, but I'll just mention it, which is through our recognized course provider scheme, which is a scheme we have set up with educational institutions, and other training bodies where we offer this sort of reciprocal route to membership through Ciarb when you take their courses. So it tends to be things like in an LLM or university
So I think,
setting.
I mean, I think that's one thing to is good for people to say, okay, what's the most efficient route? Because I think there's an element of recognition of each other's training, and it's a case of, okay, what's the best horse for the best course? So CEDR, not necessarily industry specific, but probably had the longest track record in terms of training. Rick's very much built environment property. I think, Natasha, I know the ICE have got a mediation panel. You recognise other sort of training organisations. So I think probably a couple of questions. I'm going to come to Richard first, and then you can add sort of chip in. I'm looking at the qualities. You know, do you think that anybody can be a mediator, or do you need certain qualities? I'm going to ask that question. And then the killer question is the investment worth it? If I'm investing on these courses, then they're not cheap. You know, what am I getting in return? So the first question, we'll take that, and then we'll come back to the other one.
In terms of what makes a good mediator, I think lots of people can bring different things to mediation. We have panels of mediators who offer different expertise, and they offer different styles as well. A lot of mediation is very much about personalities. I think our mediators, they do share some characteristics. They are, I would say, very interested in people. You need to have good listening skills. You need to be able to speak to people and get to the things that are important to them beyond the obvious surface level legal facets of the case. So we have lots of mediators from law backgrounds. That I think is the traditional background, but we have. I personally think it's very interesting to have mediators in different backgrounds. We have mediators who come from police negotiation backgrounds. People who've been execs in businesses. A gambling industry exec has a 100% settlement rate. So I think sometimes, why would you hire a lawyer who spent their time dealing with disputes? I mean, mediation is about deal making and helping people to get to agreements. So bringing people from different backgrounds, I think, is somewhere where we would encourage. But there are certain characteristics that you need to have. I think most people, when they do the course, or some people do the course, they just go, this is it, I want to do this. I don't want to do my career anymore. I now want to be a mediator. But it is not easy, and sometimes you're working for very long days. You need to work with parties who often don't like each other very much, so you have to manage the pace and you have to bring them together. So you have to be sort of skillful in terms of observing the way they react to things, and you have to be tenacious and persistent, and you have to measure the pace, not let things go off the rails if you can see it going that way. Keep people together, sometimes for quite a long time, to give them the best opportunity of reaching a deal.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from any other panelists in terms of
Sure,
qualities?
I'll chime in. I think I'll echo what you've already said, but I think to mediate, I think relevant to this crowd is really strong industry experience or business experience. I think, Matt, you were saying before, you got to know your onions. I mean, I think if you have deep sectoral knowledge and expertise, that's really going to help in the process, because you have a deep understanding of some of the issues. I mean, that's not always the case. It's obviously, there's tons of mediators who have a general skill set there, and they're great with communication. They have that creativity to bring people to solutions. But I think it can be real value for folks to have certain sectoral.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big take. I mean, I remember the CEDR course. I went back to Mrs. Malloy that evening, and she asked my opinion, and I was trained not to give an opinion because it was the facilitative way. She gave me what she thought of me not giving an opinion, because she said if I knew the answer, I wouldn't have asked you the question. So, and I think that I think that's probably one thing that's hit home in terms of if you're trained on giving an answer. So think engineer, think QS. Is that have you got that bedside manner? Perhaps, and I don't, and I think there are some good mediators, and I think when I certainly grew up making decisions, and I had to change, and that I've gone on probably just because I've had 4 teenagers in the house, and I've had to mediate at home. And that probably leads on to my next question. It said, is it worth it? You know, what's the chances of actually getting a gig, you know, from going in the course and coming out the other end? And I'm just sort of interested in that, and what other benefits that might there be from the training.
Okay, so I mean, embarking on the mediation training, we do make it quite clear you're not going to get rich quick by doing it, but you learn so many more skills. You're going to learn negotiating at home. I mean, we have had people that have done the training and they've said it's just really opened their eyes to the way how to interact with people. You know, listening, active listening, way people react, their body language. So I think the training itself, if you're going into a career for dispute resolution, it provides a good foundation and a good route to other forms of dispute resolution. In terms of numbers, I mean, we tend to find, because of mediation and its very nature, you're getting the parties around the table, they're going to be talking, they're more likely to agree the name of the mediator. So if you were to ask us how many appointments we make of mediators, I would say, you know, very little in comparison to other areas. But the reasoning behind that is because the parties tend to, if they're going to sit around the table, they want to know the mediator they're going to sit around the table with, whether he be a QS, whether he be, you know, an engineer. So they tend to know that. That's what they want. So that what we find is that people that do the mediation training do get mediation nominations afterwards, but it's probably from their own networking and, you know, going out and telling parties that they've done this training.
I was just going to add on that. Thanks, Raj. So basically at the ICE, it's not our main area of dispute resolution, but we are slowly building up that register. And I think those that are on our mediation register are obviously really successful in other forms of ADR, so arbitration and adjudication as well. And there are a lot of skills within mediation that are really important within those, you know, that bedside manner, that being able to handle different parties and their opinions. And I think that's what is really useful. So at the IC, we recognise anyone that has done a civil... I've written it down. Any mediation cause recognised by the Civil Mediation Council. So it would be anyone from CEDR or RICS or anything that you think you'd like to do. But I think it's important that the characteristics of those people that do the course, you know, that's really, really, really useful within conflict avoiding panels or...
I think what I've...
something else?
Yeah, no, go on. No. So, I mean, what my experience, I think I finished the training about 2001. I did a couple of observerships, and I probably didn't get my first appointment until about 2009-10. But it was after I'd built up a reputation in another area. And then I saw quite a rapid number of appointments, but people were looking for disputes that had some kind of adjudication element in it. So what they're basically saying, they want to get out of an adjudication decision they don't like. So they wanted somebody to say, look, if they were in front of you, they would have lost. You go and tell them. So it was sort of, I think that takes time to build up. So I think that, and I think the other thing I remember learning how to listen, but also negotiation, how people negotiate, offer strategies. I think that's was really useful for me.
I was just going to add, it's really a skill set. I mean, as I said, you are learning. I mean, there's the phrase that's used on the course is moving from unconscious competence to conscious competence, and then you just learn how to sort of structure negotiations and go about approaching breaking deadlocks. Even if you're not going to be a mediator, you'll probably be involved in mediations or negotiations. It's going to help you in that. It's probably going to have a lot of application to some of the situations you find yourself in your professional and personal life as well, in terms of is it worth it? Look, we have some people who come from very, very glorified sort of legal backgrounds, and it takes a while to build up a practice, and they expect that they're going to get lots of appointments. It doesn't. You have to, walk the walk. You have to go out and often promote yourselves with law firms and offer free training courses. There are voluntary mediation organisations you can get to hone your skills. There's obviously the recent court rules change. There's the case law authority at Churchill, and I've seen that the courts are now rolling out Churchill orders. So they are actually going to roll out a template to all the courts. Parties are going to be ordered to mediate. So there's going to be more work out there. It's going to be at different levels, but I would encourage anyone that just take any opportunity you can get to do mediation, build your skills, build your reputation in it, and I wouldn't give up the day job immediately, but that you might want to, spare some time along your day job to develop your practice.
I'll just touch on one more thing, which is that around, is it worth the investment? About 5 years ago, so I come from an arbitration background, commercial arbitration and investment arbitration, and hadn't had much exposure to mediation. Did my training at the Singapore International Mediation Center. Don't tell Ciarb. And we'll edit this from the video.
It's on YouTube.
And I was instantly converted, and I found the whole skill set, the whole week's training, really, really hugely valuable. Just as another skill set of my arsenal. It's a whole another way of thinking and approaching problems and approaching dispute resolution. So for any of you who are sort of, considering this as something you may find interesting.
I think if you're in the trenches advising, I think to know the process, know what the mediator's doing, tactics, I think that can be quite useful. And that a mediator's not going to tell you that you've got a great case. So, that type of thing. And I think it's those sort of things. I'm going to move on now and to adjudication. So I'm going to involve Susan a little bit more. But before I come to Susan, I'm going to ask Susan about the qualities required. So I'm going to, I will do that because I think give the others a bit of a break. So I'm going to go back to front in some ways. So I'm going to go to Susan first. There's qualities required of an adjudicator.
Thank you. So we've learnt that if you're a mediator, you've got a future of lots of work and a happy family life. I'm not quite sure that will apply to you if you become an adjudicator, but you will have lots of work because adjudication is now the go-to method of dispute resolution for construction disputes. So that's one good thing. Family life might be a bit difficult, but there we go. I was just thinking about the qualities of an adjudicator. I jotted down, I think, 8 different points, but just off the top of my head. Now, the first one is technical knowledge, but to be honest, you'll have got that by the time you get onto a panel anyway. So as long as you've got your knowledge of construction contracts, procedure, and in particular, at the moment, payment and valuation mechanics, then that will be the technical knowledge. So you'll be expected to have that. The second point I thought of was you've actually got to have the ability to make a decision. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, that's bloody obvious. But the thing is, it's actually hard to make a decision at times. When you have got detailed submissions, lots of information, loads of paperwork, and lots of complicated points that people make, and despite trying to narrow the issues down, sometimes people always throw in new points. It can be very difficult to make that decision, and you've got to have the skill to be able to do that. So that's a really important one. And you have to remember, what have you been asked to do? Where's the burden of proof? Has it been met? It sounds simple, but it can be really hard. So that's a skill that you must master. Third point, confidence. And I say that because sometimes you will get parties on the other side who may be represented by the head of a major law firm, a KC, and don't forget they're representing the parties. You have to make a decision based on the information you have. You may turn round to a KC and disagree with them. And I've had people submit me after a decision saying, well, I disagree with your decision. Here's my PhD thesis that says you're wrong. Well, that's great. But you've got to have the confidence to make that decision, make your mind up and stand with it. So confidence in yourself and your abilities is important. Fourth point I've put down, impartiality and integrity. And again, might sound obvious, but it can be hard. When you're making decisions on allowing submissions, asking questions of the parties, the amount of time I spend, and I don't charge for it, by the way, about when I ask a question, how I phrase it, because I want to make sure it comes across as impartial and unbiased. Really, those sort of things you need to think about. You've just got to make sure that both parties have a fair opportunity to make their case. So point 5, attention to detail, identifying key issues and analytical skills. again, it's very easy to get excited, particularly as an engineer, when you've got a technical issue and it's like, oh, look, there's an issue about this. I want to get, and it's like, no, step away from the calculations and actually look at, again, what you're being asked to look at. And quite often, the things that come up in a referral, you may well find when you get the response, many of those points are actually agreed. And I've had that recently, and it's great because it's, oh, I don't need to deal with all those other points. So it is that attention to detail and just looking at the key issues. Point 6, time for a decision. Now, every adjudicator at some stage has said, I need more time. But the issue is, if you're going to do that, ask the parties, be clear why, keep it to a minimum, do not wait till the day before your decision and say, I need another 3 weeks. You know, that's it's not fair on the parties either. Point 7, be clear on your jurisdiction. Now, quite often you will get jurisdictional challenges that you need to deal with, but make sure you're happy yourself that you have jurisdiction at the start. If you're not clear, ask the parties, because sometimes you might spot something that they haven't, and there's no point you going on and issuing a decision which is not going to be enforceable. So don't be afraid to say to the parties, can I just clear, is that point that you made in that email, is that a jurisdictional challenge or not? And quite often they'll just say no, but at least then you've got that satisfaction and knowledge. And then the final point I was going to say was clear communications. If you're going to issue directions to a party, particularly if they're not represented, and quite often you will get parties that are not represented, make clear exactly what it is you want from them and when you want it by. Because it's very easy to say, oh, please submit a response by or whatever, or a reply. But if the parties don't understand what they need to do, as I say, that can be an issue, particularly, say, with unrepresented parties. And again, in your decision, make it clear. What's your decision? How have you got there? So can they understand? Even if they disagree with what you've said, is it understandable how you got to that point? And can they see where it's come from? As I say, even if they disagree. So they were just sort of the quick eight points that I think...
I think that sort of rings true. I think very much the training of adjudicators is very much geared around case management, managing the parties. There's the knowledge, there's writing the decision itself, but it's the case management, I think, is as challenging, if sometimes more challenging than actually when you've got the time to actually reach your decision. So I think some really good points. Thanks for that. I'm going to now focus, going to circle back. I'm going to go to Natasha first and think, so interested in the ICE route. I think a couple of things that I sort of, and whether it's just perception, I don't know if it's real, is that you seem to be quite heavy on your law test, law exam, and the qualification criteria. Is it you need to be a civil engineer, a surveyor, or a civil engineer? I think is that.
That is true.
Yeah.
So at the IC, I suppose the minimum requirements really are that you have passed our Module 1 law exam. So that's focused around tort. And we have like an online training session that you can do to pass that. And most people, if they have done maybe a diploma in law, or they've done a master's, they've done a construction master's, then they can actually get. They don't have to do that as part of entry onto the register. So normally people get an exemption from that. But what we do require, because most of the IC adjudications are NEC, is proof that you can work with the NEC contract. So we do a Module 3 exam, which is an advanced NEC contract exam. And basically that's just pitched at people being able to prove that they have that understanding, because obviously that's the majority of our appointments. We do training for that. We also do a webinar with the examiners. It's not expensive, it's like £50. So we try and make these things accessible to people that obviously want to join. I think one big part of the IC as well is we do also understand that, you know, it is a challenge to get on these registers, and you need to have the experience, as Matt and Susan, you know, explained. Like, you know, you need to have an understanding of what goes on in adjudication. So we do a free mentoring and pupillage scheme as well, which anyone's welcome to join, and you'll just be paired up with one of our adjudicators that exists. And you don't have to apply to the IC once you've completed it, but it's just there for prospective adjudicators.
Yeah, no, I've had a number of pupils who've gone through that. I'm glad I don't have to sit that exam. I think, you know, it is demanding, so don't underestimate how difficult that is. So knowledge of the law, knowledge of the contract is what you're looking for really, as a given, and then there'll be assessment. I think one of your questions, I'm just going to Chris, and apologise, but I think you've sort of gone through the route. So I assume there's that adjudication will be similar to mediation. So I'm going to go over to Raj and build on what Natasha talks about. It's like the initiatives or things that you're doing for the newer practitioner, or the diversity statistics were quite standout a couple of years ago from the Adjudication Society. I think it went from about 7.6% to 8 point something. So we're still at very low numbers in terms of gender.
It was just under 8, and it's now just under 9.
Yeah.
So, 1%.
There's been a bit of a, but I'm just sort of interested in what are you doing, and then just throw that open as well.
Okay, so in terms of diversity of the adjudication panel, we are very much aware of that, and what we have been doing, and I think this is the second year that we've actually done it, is we've doing things like to get onto our panel you need to complete the RICS diploma, and so we're offering an opportunity of a scholarship place to do that diploma, for women in construction, so to try and create that, and it's not only just. We appreciate it's only one space, but it's also an awareness thing as well that, this is a career for women. A lot of women seem to think that, they can't go into that field. But, we're trying to do is create an awareness and an understanding that this is open. We can't force people to come into the sector, but what we're trying to do is just encourage more women to come through. So we do have that specifically for women, and then for new adjudicators, because we do have people that have done the diploma, are keen to get onto the panel, and we have tried to do things like consumer schemes. Last year, RICS were appointed by Which on the Trust Trader scheme, whereby we appoint adjudicators, and we're trying to bring some of the newer adjudicators in to deal with those kind of disputes, just to try and open it up a bit as well.
Yeah, no, thanks. I'm going to come back to Richard. I'm going to come back on that consumer scheme, because I know you do with it when I talk about arbitration, but I think the question I'm thinking, are there too many cooks? Are there too many nominating bodies? I know CEDR, and I think you're all nominating bodies, and I'm asking that, should we have a restriction, or is the free market system okay? I was interested in all of your views on that.
No, I think that there are panels which will be used more than others, and as long as people are, as the standard of practice is good, and people are providing quality decisions, then I would think having choice and options, and we have an adjudication panel. We do not do masses of adjudications. We do not do masses of high value adjudications. That probably provides opportunities for people at different stages of careers to do adjudication work. So generally, I think my answer is no.
I was just going to say, when I was chairing the Adjudication Society, the two things I was looking for was clarity and transparency about panels, because I think you can't decide which panel is appropriate unless you actually know how that panel operates. And I'm pleased to say that everyone who's here today, they've spent a lot of time and effort being more transparent in their panels, how they operate, how you get on the panels. There are other panels that are not so transparent, and my plea would be, if you're looking for an adjudicator, why not try and support a panel that's actually trying to help would-be adjudicators? So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I think, Susan, you've done the Adjudication Society have done that really good
I
resource.
think that's going to be really good resource. Yeah. So there'll be resources to the training requirements, the qualification requirements. I think that's just useful to understand. You don't really want to go through the same hoop all the time, and I think it's a case of what's efficient. Very different place 25 years ago.
Definitely.
Because I think they weren't sure what adjudication was going to become, but now it's really competitive. There's lots of people training and to break in and deal with that sort of chicken and egg conundrum. And I think probably in arbitration, we're going to move on to that in a minute, but I think one thing, the CIC LVD scheme was very much to sort of, it wasn't so much a two-tier entry, but it was just like, well, actually, the more experienced adjudicators might not necessarily want to do that. Not underestimating the complexity of those types of disputes, but we thought it might also be an opportunity for people to cut their teeth. And it's hard work. And I think that's something that, I know that the CIC, for example, again, we don't appoint many people, but we have different criteria in terms of whether you've had to practice. And I think for me, having sort of developed a career in dispute resolution is very much, you want to be on as many panels as possible to say you are an adjudicator, and then you get that first gig and you hopefully do a good job, and then that gets out there. It's hard though, it's, you could be on a panel of, 200 or 300 people who appoint less than one per panel member. Yeah. And I think that's just, that's, yeah.
Because I was going to add on to that. So when you look at the framework as well, our ICS panel is not just open all the time to anybody that's completed and satisfies the criteria. And the reasoning behind that is that anybody that is on the RICS adjudication panel has got a certain amount of mandatory competencies that they have to undertake. They have to be reassessed every 5 years. And so the reason why we don't open the floodgates to the panel is because we want to ensure that once you're on the panel, you're getting that area of expertise, you're getting that exposure, and you can then satisfy all the other things like additional CPD requirements when you come to reassessment. And that's the reason why we manage the size of the panel in that sense.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to arbitration. There used to be construction industry arbitration in the UK. And I see from time to time, and I'm really interested in that. I think the training requirements I'll probably summarise in terms of, typically, because I was involved with helping setting up the diplomas in adjudications with the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and the RICS. It was modelled on the old diploma in arbitration. So you did the law of contracts, torts, civil evidence, then you learnt about the Arbitration Act, then you learnt about case management, then you learn about how to write an award. So very much similar to the adjudication sort of training that people might be more familiar with. But I think the question that I'm really interested in is it worth it in the UK? So just thinking domestically in the construction industry, is there enough work out there? And so I'm just trying to think who I'm going to go with first on this. Probably Raj, actually. Sorry, because you just got rid of the mic, so I knew that she didn't want to answer the questions.
Passing it on, yeah. So we do have people that do the diploma in arbitration that are construction specialists as well. A lot of them just want to do the whole suite of things. They want to do, arbitration, adjudication, mediation. And we do even have a construction and engineering arbitration service where we do appointments, because although adjudication is by far the most popular in the construction side, you do find that some people feel that that's getting very legalistic, it's getting expensive, and so we do have a construction and engineering service which has capped fees, for example. So we have tried to do that. I think adjudication is still very popular, but And
I'm interested in, from the ICE and CIRB, but in terms of, what are you seeing in terms of people coming to you? You'll be listed as nominating body for construction industry arbitration in the UK.
It's hard to gain numbers from the IC's perspective. So our register's open, for people to join, but also it's an open register on our website. So people can go there direct to choose their adjudicator or their arbitrator or their mediator. So people will agree that without our involvement. So statistically, it's a challenge for us to kind of know.
Okay. So they're looking for the safe pair of hands. People.
Yeah, they might come. They might want someone to get a bridge.
Yeah. I mean, my experience of, and Kristen, do you want to sort of add?
Sure. No, I was just going to say, it's similar. We're a global organization. Arbitration is our biggest sort of portfolio, but I would say, just looking at the membership demographic, members sort of fall into 3 areas generally, although they all wear many hats, as most of the group does. So they're either neutrals, so currently practicing, as an arbitrator, mediator, adjudicator, and often that's in construction, even in the international arbitration space. The second area is counsel, so they're, acting, arbitration counsel. And the third area is non-lawyers who are experts. So these are range from accountants to engineers and surveyors, et cetera. So it's really a mixed group, and there's tons of interest in construction in all markets, including the UK. I mean, but again, it tends to be the interest is in adjudication.
Okay, you got some more. Yeah, so, I mean, thing I would say, sorry, yeah, Susan, yeah, we've got it on camera, so we've got lots of witnesses. I mean, I guess my experience, I mean, I originally did a diploma in arbitration. I was immediately told I needed more grey hair, I needed to wear long trousers, and then adjudication fell out. In the meantime, I went off to get legally qualified, and then adjudication came. So I think the advice for me when I was turning up at arbitration school at the age of 27 was, look, you're much too young, but if you're going to be serious about this, get yourself legally qualified. So I went along that route, but that was in pre-adjudication time, before it really sort of kicked off. So then I think my first arbitration appointment was probably about 10 years after I'd done the diploma, and I thought, oh, bloody hell, I have to get the books out. And it was horrible. It was a residential, like, sorry to anyone who's had an arbitration with a house of their own, but people didn't know what they were doing. I had to scratch my head. I looked at the arbitration awards and they were like archaic. It was all old-fashioned language, and it was like, right, okay. But I didn't want to go outside of my lane. I thought, well, I've grown up as an adjudicator, but I've got to do it the way because of the book. I think things have changed now, and there are arbitrations out there, but I think what you see is that knowledgeable parties or representatives will go to the known entity. Flick over to international arbitration then. So construction arbitration is huge internationally. And, you see the expert firms, they're crawling all over themselves to get those big instructions. The law firms are out there. I think the statistics, there's a global arbitration review just recently. They looked at, if you took construction and energy thinking about building wind farms, power plants, that type of thing falls, I don't know whether it falls in that, but that was almost over half of what the ICC were getting in Paris. So out that space, it's really quite popular. However, who are the arbitrators? So there's a perception from where I'm standing is that they're retired judges and they're KCs. So again, really, is it worth a construction professional? Is it realistic for a construction professional to become an arbitrator either internationally? And I'm just sort of interested in your thoughts of, yes.
I mean, I think the short answer is yes, absolutely. I mean, I think like in many other spaces of dispute resolution, there is, internationally, there is a desire to kind of diversify the pool of arbitrators available. And that means not only gender, but also regional, geographic expertise, subject matter expertise, so that there's a bigger set of folks beyond just kind of judges and cases and the normal sort of really legal or lawyer have legal background focused people in the industry. And I think there is definitely I think there's really a space for more construction trained arbitration professionals.
Yeah,
certainly.
Yeah, probably a key difference for most domestic arbitrations is a sole arbitrator that I've seen, but internationally the norm tends to be 3. I know that sometimes they'll say if it's a low value dispute, which is $10 million US, if you go to the ICC, then they might appoint, or it might be 2 million, sorry, they might appoint a sole arbitrator, but generally it's 3. So potentially you think you might have diversity of professions there. What I'm actually seeing is there's more diversity on dispute adjudication boards. So, and that I just wonder whether, is that the route to become a construction arbitrator, is to be doing some dispute adjudication board training. This sort of piggybacks into sort of the next, sort of the final session, but I just wonder whether that, playing that role of having 3 people that's in, is that the route? I think, because what you'll tend to get, you'll get the parties will nominate their arbitrator, and there's a strategy and game in that, because you don't want a weak voice on the panel, and then they're going to appoint the chair, or they might not. And I think it's so I'm just sort of interested in, in sort of piggybacking onto the last subject in terms of other areas. But do you think perhaps
I
dispute
suppose
adjudication board training might
one thing to say, not just we don't necessarily do adjudication board training, but you know, all of our arbitrators are actually also on our mediation list. So there is definitely the duality between these skills. And I think that, you know, that reflects that. And some of them are also in the adjudication list. So there's a shared experience.
Yeah.
I might just pass to Raj from.
Well, I mean, obviously dispute boards are more popular internationally as well. I think just to emphasise that, having the dispute board appointed right at the beginning on a big project, and then they can deal with any issues as they arrive, you know, is very much done internationally. And we did it here for the Olympics, but internationally, it's a way forward. They have their advantages, but they can also be quite costly. So on the flip side, we do have almost a pay-as-you-go kind of service when it comes to things like conflict avoidance, where we appoint conflict avoidance specialists in consultation with the parties. So I think we've got a great example of the work that we did with Transport for London in developing a conflict avoidance panel, a process, which was really just experienced dispute resolvers who were mediators, arbitrators, adjudicators, expert determiners, who could use their various skills and talk to the parties. We would actually first talk to the parties to see what they wanted, what kind of specialism they wanted, even the names of the people who they may possibly consider, and then see that process through. With conflict avoidance, it's more of a recommendation, unless they want a binding decision. It's a very flexible process, and it's a process that seems to be talked about a lot more in the construction sector. You know, it saves time and costs, I suppose, at the end of the day.
So I think something that's sort of coming through is that there's a call for experience and experience of different processes. And also it takes time to get to that point where you would perhaps recommend somebody for a conflict avoidance panel or a dispute adjudication board. I mean, I think what I've seen with dispute adjudication boards, the lead trainer is FIDIC, and they very much, when people are looking for dispute adjudication boards, they're looking for people who are on the FIDIC's presidential panel. And again, that's quite a grueling sort of process to get onto that panel, and then there's a case of, have you got experience of work in that country on that type of project? So they're looking for experience. So if you've got international experience, I think that could help. And then if you're working in a sort of a dispute adjudication board, I think you speak to people in the Middle East and they say, well, they just strike through the dispute adjudication board because they don't want to spend the money. Most of my dispute adjudication board is, are you available to be a DAB of one? Okay, when does the project start? I know it's finished, but we need to come to you before we arbitrate. Don't spend much time on it, by the way. We just need a notice of dissatisfaction, and then we're off to arbitration, and we'll get a person who knows what they're doing. But just so you know, you have 84 days, and we'll go through the game. And then you get the other actually grown up. We want you to come to visit site every 3 months, and very much give advisory, dispute avoidance, which is like the conflict avoidance bit. And I think that requires you to have the knowledge of the dispute processes to help people avoid, I think. Susan, are you recovered? Sorry, I was going to ask you. Sorry. If you're ready for another...
Sorry about that, yes. That was
so I'm thinking, we've talked about the sort of the decision-maker type roles or the facilitative type role of a mediator or perhaps evaluative, but I'm just thinking maybe is there other work, maybe doing work in those, having familiarity with that process, but what about expert witness work? You know, we're construction professionals, so assuming we're qualified, is that a way into the dispute resolution world? Is that of value?
It can be because, I'm thinking in particular of one expert witness that I know that is now a qualified and well thought of adjudicator, so that it can be a route through. And to be honest, I think any experience in construction disputes from the point of view of one of the users is helpful. And particularly, say, experts, you will gain experience of working with both the parties in dispute, their legal teams, their commercial teams, and also different adjudicators. And you'll see how they approach things, and each adjudicator will have a slightly different approach. So, and you'll learn about the tactics that go on in adjudication. So any different experience or training you can get will help. The only thing I'd say is that if you're already an adjudicator, if you're looking at getting a qualification in something else, then you have to look at the bigger picture. And that is, as we say, you know, the amount of time and effort it will take to get that qualification, and will it actually reap a benefit? And for example, depending on your employment situation, you know, will your employer be happy for you to do this sort of work as well? Sometimes that can be a problem, particularly for new adjudicators. Or are you thinking of working for yourself, in which case you've got to make sure you get that throughput of work to keep you going. So, but no, definitely any different experience that you can get, I think definitely if you've got the opportunity and it will fit in with your current employment situation, then yeah, I think it's a bonus.
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly will recommend to people who do the diplomas, which I teach on, is you know, you need to get some kind of experience of disputes. Now, if that's in your current employment setup, if you know that there's adjudication or something going along, ask to be involved. Shadow, see, you know, if there's something going wrong on your project, it's like, well, could I just be, you know, made aware of the processes? And I think when I started, I mean, I didn't intend to get into dispute resolution, but I started the business in '96. My client, I was just going to sell my time as a QS, and my clients were subcontractors who needed help negotiating accounts, and then go off on this arbitration course. And I thought, wow, I can send a notice of arbitration. This should be interesting. And what would I have done if I was the contractor's QS getting this? I'll have a go anyway. So off I went. And so I then really cut my teeth on helping out what I call lower division parties in terms of getting money and having the, I mean, okay, I'd done the legal training, but very much the party representation or negotiation. I think then, because I didn't go, when I interviewed first for a particular AMB, they turned me away, and then I came back 12 months later having run 11 adjudications and got references for the adjudicators that I appeared in front of, and the door opened then.
I was actually going to say that the other way of opening those doors is by party representation, representing parties at adjudications and arbitrations and even mediations is a real way of, particularly after you've got that qualification and you're in that in-between period of trying to get onto A and B panels, you know, a way of keeping your foot in the door, getting that experience is by party representation work.
Yeah, I'm going to go now, conscious of time, I'm going to give you all the opportunity to give some advice as to what would your advice be to somebody who's a construction professional who's interested in pursuing a career in dispute resolution. So I'll who wants more thinking time, and then whoever's got the mic and ready to talk first, then please do.
I think I ended up with it.
Sorry about that.
So I think it's looking at what your plan is, your bigger term plan, trying to get as much of the skill sets that you can and do about, whether it be by formal training, and then party representation, I think, and trying to get some sort of experience and exposure, pupillage, observerships, etc. But I think anybody who's interested in a career in dispute resolution, you know, keep that net wide, I suppose, as we can.
Yeah. Kristen?
I think I would echo what Raj said about think about how this fits into your bigger picture. Don't be afraid to just dip your toe into some of these training courses and see if that is of interest or the kind of thing you want to invest in before you maybe take a leap into the whole qualification. But I'll also echo that, like I said, I mean, about a third of our members are experts sitting in, you know, providing expert reports and sitting as an expert witness in arbitration or as part of other procedures. So that could be something to consider as you start that journey. You don't have to jump to kind of being a neutral. You could sort of get involved and get experience in the dispute resolution process through as an expert.
I think there's great points there. But I would say plan. So look at what the resources are that are going to be sent after this event and sort of plan what each nominated body requires of you, but also I think take up any opportunity that comes your way. So, network with anyone that you know might be in dispute resolution, use any mentor schemes. The Adjudication Society have done a great document on that, and just take every opportunity.
Yeah. Richard?
Yes, I agree with all that. I was going to mention there's 3 parts to CEDR. There's a mediation bit, there's the training bit, and then there's a consumer bit, which and the consumer focuses on disputes between consumers and businesses, and there are some arbitration schemes. There is one, I think, to do with cavity walls, and there is one to do with glazing, and these are obviously at a very different scale to some of the construction arbitrations out there, but they give opportunities for people to build up experience and track record and get a feel for that and whether it's something you want to do.
Yeah, I've got a cheeky question. Who's doing the ABTA stuff now? Because you used to do it, CEDR did it. Do you still do the ABTA, the travel agents? Or is that somebody else got that?
We do lots of conciliations. We do conciliations for airlines, and adjudications. So there's we do adjudications for
different industries.
Telco providers. Yeah. But it's I guess it's looking at discipline, writing decisions, looking at the frameworks and so on. So and they are. I think I was talking to John Munson yesterday, and he was saying that I know someone who worked, I think, on a cavity wall arbitration, and then something much bigger came along, and he just had that perfect experience for it. So. Hopefully something like that comes your way.
I just remember when I started, everyone said, you've got to do the ABTA ones. You got about 100 quid, and it was basically somebody moaning about their cruise disaster. And it was, the people have done hundreds of these things. And I said, so it'd be interesting. I don't know, I think I do, but I think do justice to the people who are on the panel. I won't mention who they are, but you can Google that, I suspect. Susan?
Yeah, I mean, echoing what everybody said, but as Natasha mentioned, look for opportunities. And I'd also say be flexible, because I never imagined that I'd end up doing what I do now when I graduated. So things will change, situations will arise. So put your eyes on the prize. If you want to become an adjudicator, mediator, an arbitrator, whatever, fine, research that, look for the path, but be open to other opportunities as they come along. And you might find yourself actually at the end of the day doing something completely different, and life's too short to do things that you're not enjoying or don't want to do. So just be aware of opportunities and other alternative paths that are out there.
Yeah, no, and I think what I would say is I think you need to make a decision of whether that would, I think, try and find out as much as you can about the role and whether actually you would enjoy that, because I think. I've certainly seen people have sort of actually, especially people who've shadowed me. They've done the training and then they've come shadowed me and gone, I could not do that. Sorry, I just really do not enjoy this, or I'm just not suited to it. So I think try and find out something about the role and whether you want to do it. I certainly discovered it by accident. I just got involved with an expert. A colleague who was an expert witness needed somebody to do some ferreting around in an estimating file. And the arbitrator died. Apparently that was quite a common thing. I saw the day work rates of the beauty parade for the replacement arbitrators and thought, well, that's quite good. If anyone knows Yossa Hughes from Boys of the Black Stuff, I could do that, give me a job. I thought, so I was unashamedly chased the money, and off I went to arbitration school. And it was then, okay, you've got time on your side. And I think that's the other thing, is what they're looking for. I think construction industry dispute resolvers, they're looking for experience of the projects, how they work, how the job goes on. You've got that sort of sense of, is someone trying to pull the wool over my eyes? And I think that takes time. I was really naive when I started the business in having 10 years as a contracted QS. I trusted a signature on a day worksheet. I come to realise working at the other end of the industry that perhaps that might have been procured and things like that, and then I heard about cost-back systems and crediting and dodgy accounting, and oh my God, I was very green. So I think there's an element of having the miles on the clocks and know what happens on a construction project in a company, and then you realise actually what is it, what have I got to add, and am I prepared to do that? And I think if you have an idea of, well, do I want to do it? Am I prepared to invest the time and the money? And it can be quite stressful, I think, in terms of don't underestimate the time involvement, the impact that has on your life outside of your work. And so people have said to me about, well, you trained as a lawyer. He said, well, yeah, we didn't have children then, and we were both working, and that's what we did. so I was prepared, but I would not want to do it with a 1-year-old and 2-year-old in the house because I just wouldn't have seen them, and I would have felt guilty all over. So I think it's a case of, am I prepared to do that? Do I need to qualify as a lawyer, or can I go in and do the diploma as, that sort of, or a master's? And I think it's a case of just want to sort of think that's what I would say. And then get yourself in the dispute resolution community so you recognise, so pat on the back for everyone who's turned up here, but talk to people. Adjudication Society, I'm not just saying that, but that really is the go-to dispute resolution method of choice. But join the Adjudication Society, Society of Construction Law, go to events, the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, the branch events where although it's not construction specific, you learn from other industries. And my work, plug for the Worshipful Company of Arbitrators, we're not construction specific. And we had a chap talk at lunch today about sports dispute resolution. The next junior warden is someone who's a family lawyer. They do arbitration in that area. So you can learn from other areas, but it's that sort of, I think it's a case of you make the investment. The one thing I would say is I still enjoy it. It doesn't feel like a proper job. Proper job was on the site, having to give the money to the directors because they didn't believe my profit forecast. Employers QS didn't want to pay me. The subcontractor wanted me to throw me off the scaffold. That was real work. This is dealing with other people's problems, and I think it's I still enjoy it enough to not stop doing it. Do less of it, perhaps, but yeah. Okay, it's your turn. So remember, you're on mic potentially, and you're going to be recorded. But we've got I think about 20 minutes. But if anyone's got a question, I'm going to probably leave one mic here and ask maybe Chi to take over with Mike in the audience. Yeah, I've got another one as well. I think one would probably okay. So.
Hello, my name is Tom and I'm from Morton Partners. Just want to ask, so you mentioned something about when you were starting out, somebody told you that you have to wear long trousers and you have to have grey hair for you to be called to a panel, etc. So what are the panels doing at the moment to try and get young professionals to get into the panels, or either work experience, like in other industry, like in construction, you have apprenticeship, etc. Do we have something similar like that, or you just get into the membership and then try and find your way around?
Probably I know Natasha, then Raj. I don't think they're both. I'm familiar that they're doing work in that sort of space. So, yep.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. That's a good question. I think that's definitely an area we always look to improve in. I think we have started to look at building things in place. For example, I think I mentioned earlier about the free mentoring and pupillage opportunity. I mean, that's the ideal, what we would like people to take up. We don't really mind, whether or not you're new to the industry. So obviously at the IC, we want people to be in the construction industry or in civil engineering. But, I think that's there for you to utilise. We obviously do understand that we want people to be a fellow, and I understand that is a limitation. But, before you get to that stage, it'd be great if you had a lot of experience in the dispute resolution world before, you start to apply. So
and I think that is probably a point that generally dispute resolution isn't a primary profession. So you would have had to qualified in your primary profession, whether that's a lawyer, engineer, QS, architect. That takes time, and then I think commonality is perhaps a 10 years experience. So the grey hairs come eventually. But
so yeah, we would say we require 10 years experience in your primary profession, and also getting that academic qualification in the dispute resolution field that you want to specialise in, and then going out and looking at pupillage schemes, mentoring, etc., representing parties. I think that's probably the best way.
I was going to ask Susan, so that you've got a new practitioner group, the Adjudication Society, I think?
Yes, we run a couple of schemes. The first is a mentoring scheme, which can either be effectively an informal scheme. So basically you will arrange with your mentee and meet them maybe once a month online or whatever to chat about whatever they want. And then we have a formal pupillage scheme as well. We also run something called the New Practitioners Group. So if you're completed your exams, you're hoping to get onto panels, it works with people that are new to the practice, and they've just started last year, and they're organising meetings and online get-togethers and networking, so that you actually got some peers with you that are going through the same process, and you'll also meet up with more experienced adjudicators that will help you guide through. So there's a lot of help there if you're new and you're trying to get on the panels. It's not easy, we know. I've been there myself. You know, when you email an AMB and they tell you, oh, we'll send you an email back, and 6 years later you're still waiting. You know, it's that happens. But there's a lot of help out there now if you're trying to get there. So don't give up. Yes, you do need a certain experience, but we can help you on the way, and all the other bodies will help you with that as well. They're all keen to encourage new people through.
I think the other thing I would say is that get the qualifications out of the way when you've got the motivation and the ability to do it. So in terms of wherever your life journey is, if you're planning a family, you know, it's a case, okay, is that something I need to do now when I'm having a career break? Would that keep me active? And, you know, to maybe do the academic bit, if you're taking a career break for family reasons, that you might think, oh, actually now, yeah, am I mad? But you know, I've had some pupils who've said, oh, it's great, I can fit a shadow in now. You know, I've got maternity leave. I think that worked quite nicely. Give me something to do. You know, that sort of 3 or 4 weeks. I was like, wow, great. It's great. You know, so then, you know, 3 weeks later, just having the briefing and say, oh, how's the baby? Yeah, fine. Yeah, it's great. Oh, yeah, just but yeah. So I mean, that's obviously won't work for everybody. But just think about, okay, can I do it now? I had a discussion and negotiation with Mrs. Malloy at my bar finals. Do you want 9 months of hell or 2 years of hell, part-time, full-time? And it was that, oh, let's start a family. Oh, please, not yet. Okay, 9 months of hell, then it is. So, but that was a conscious choice. Do it now, because I don't think I want to do it when, you know, number 1 was on the way. By the way, number 4, I wanted to do more courses, but yeah, that's another reason. Sorry, I think Lucas, and then chap over.
Thank you. I think I'm more aware of the RICS and how it works. I've consumed as well the diploma in adjudication. So my question now is for Richard today. I'm aware of the difference between being an accredited mediator and being on the panel. So in terms of getting the experience for the panel of CEDR, would voluntary schemes help any decisions made without a fee potentially by joining these voluntary schemes, or would that be something which is irrelevant to actually making it into the panel of CEDR, the panel of mediators? Thank you.
No, I mean, any experience will help. I mean, mediation experience is a requisite. You can get that in different ways. I mean, we talked about observations. We have. I mentioned our consumer department runs conciliations. Now, you do not need to be on a CEDR panel to do conciliations or adjudications. There are there's contact details which are on literature of how you can ask to be offered conciliations, and that is mini mediations, and it is really. We want to be confident that the mediators that we're recommending for from our panels have a demonstrable track record, are experienced, and they've honed their skills. So we do need people to do that. Observations, conciliations, voluntary mediations. All of that is relevant experience and would be, I think, valuable for support for an application.
Yeah, I think with my observation with mediation, it's very much about people. Understanding how people think, negotiate, what they need, not what they want. The industry knowledge gets you the respect and might build up some trust for you to give them some home truths. But actually, it's all about people and just saying, look, that's for the judge to decide, that's for the adjudicator to decide. So I think if you can get skills of some of these consumer or these court-run schemes, that's all about, that's all very interesting, but you've got 2 hours with me on the telephone. Do you want to do a deal? This is quite painful. A lot of the time it comes down to it's going to cost you more than you could ever get, and this is obviously taking over your life. And that's a discussion you'll have in a complex construction case as much as you would in a dispute between a consumer and one of these big sort of delivery companies. So,
hi, my question's in relation to the qualifications. I think listening to the panel speak, there's various types of qualifications that have been stated. So Susan, you're a barrister. I believe you said you're legally qualified, but there's also masters in construction law, diplomas in construction law. Is there a better route to go? Is there an advantage over one or the other?
I think my, and chip in, but I mean, my view, and when I've had this discussion before, is you've got to look at your own personal circumstances. Now, for me, yes, I did the law conversion course, and Susan would have probably done the same thing. Equity and trust and law of property still gives me nightmares. It's just really, criminal law was fantastic, but and I toyed with putting the wig on and doing that, but actually the pay wasn't great. But would I have done that now, or would I have done it if I had a busy home life? Probably not. Did I need to do it? No. It worked for me. There are some really good construction dispute resolvers who do a postgrad training of some type. And that, I think, for me, that there's a sort of key choice is, do I need to requalify as a lawyer or not? I think that will just be, that will be personal. And then the other one, I think, is just, okay, then now, what would I get value from a master's in construction law and dispute resolution beyond that, which would have an element of adjudication or arbitration or an option? Or do I want to be an adjudicator and arbitrator and do the diploma that the Ciarb or the RICS offer? You'll learn the essentials, if you like. But in terms of the comparison, you know, I went to law school having done the diploma in arbitration, so I had what I call an entry level knowledge of contract, but it was another level when I wanted to. So yes, it was valuable, but I wouldn't wish that on anybody who's, you know, really hasn't got the support network around them to do it. I don't think it's essential. It's done me. It worked for me because I didn't have the grey hairs at that time, and so effectively I had a 3 to 5 year. I'm going to get these qualifications out of the way before we start a family. Really, that's what it came down to, and I wanted to do it. And the reality was I wasn't going to get any appointments. And then, like I say, I was fortunate. Adjudication, I was there at the beginning, not really at the beginning, but post the first enforceable decision. And then it was like, oh yeah, we need more adjudicators, because it went from 300 to about 2,000 in year one. And it was like, oh right, we'll let my lawyer on this time. But so it was a bit of good fortune. So I think you are going to have to do. You're going to have to do more work on the knowledge of the law and the case management and the statute and things like that. Whether you need to do that to qualify as a lawyer or not, I'd question. I think the other thing I would say is that actually it's knowledge of construction law and the contracts. So I got that through on-the-job sort of interest, membership of the Society of Construction Law, things like that. The reason I didn't do a master's in construction law, and I would have gone to King's College, was I already had a master's in construction management, so the master's didn't give me something that I didn't already have, although it was a different subject. And the other thing was the diploma in arbitration used to be 1 year with the CIRB, so that was 1 year instead of 2 years part-time, and that was a personal choice. It was just only then when the light switch came on that, well, actually, you're not going to get any work here, so if you really want to do this, then take the time to get these qualifications. So I think it will be personal, I think.
As just a quick question about mediation and the training. I know Natasha's already answered this question, but I've done the London School of Mediation course, which is linked with CIRB as well. But I'm just wondering if Richard or Raj can answer, would you recognise that qualification for your panels, or do I have to do your own qualification to get onto your panel? It is recognised by CMC, by the way. So
I think that ticks ICE. I think that ticks their box.
yeah.
Yeah.
For CEDR, no, you need to do the CEDR MST. There is an abbreviated course which you can do for experienced mediators, which is called the International Accreditation Program. That's a 3-day course, and it sort of focuses more on complex disputes and international disputes. But to join a CEDR panel, it is a requirement to have the CEDR MST accreditation.
Right.
Okay, and for the RICS one, you would have to do the course, the full 5 days, but because you have done previous training, what we would actually do is only charge you for the assessment day, so just the module 2. The reason why you'd have to do the full course is because our course has within it the evaluative element. So as well as we're teaching the facilitative side, we also embed into it the evaluative element, and so that's why we would require you to do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
CIRB, is it any different?
I mean, we have the experienced route track for mediators with experience where you wouldn't need to do the training course or the assessment.
I think London School of Mediation is linked to you anyway.
That's correct. That's right.
Great, thank you.
Hello. Sorry, not to repeat the question again, but at the moment I'm currently doing a diploma in adjudication with the RICS, and I just wanted to get a bit of stats on whether you have many people that have come off the back of the diploma, then practicing quantity surveyor off the back of doing a quantity surveying degree and becoming chartered, they're going straight to becoming an educator without a postgrad degree, basically.
Okay, so if you've started the diploma, and one of our criteria, which is available in the resources, is you have to do the diploma, you have to have the primary profession, 10 years experience, and there's various other bits of criteria that you need to do. Your appointment onto the panel is not automatic in that it's only as and when we have a need to make the panel bigger. So it's not an automatically you finish the diploma, you can go onto the panel. But during that time, there could be possibilities of other schemes. There could be mentoring, pupillage that you should be taking up. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was more interested in the further studies, the postgrad studies. Do you have many cases of people that have done the diploma, shown a track record of practicing, say, quantity surveying, that have successfully gone to your panel, or do they mostly do a law degree, basically, to try and qualify?
I don't think we've got the statistics.
I'm just trying to think, and I'm just trying to think of, I think the majority, let's assume there's 10 years relevant experience. So that will take time. Typically qualifying in your primary profession, so that typically is chartered. And then it's okay, well, what experience of real adjudication have you got now? I think the RICS does recognise if you've produced a decision as a pupil, they will recognise that as long as it's your own work. So I think there's a sort of, to address that chicken and egg situation, I'm not sure if the ICC, and I think the CIRB for their low value dispute scheme recognise you don't necessarily have to have the formal appointment or get paid for the gig. So if you've shadowed and you've produced a decision that's your own work, suitably anonymised, you might be able to say, yeah, I did this. So I think that's one way in, but I think my understanding of the sort of where you're looking at assessing, there'll be some kind of paper sort of exercise, and you might be in competition with people. So clearly, the more experience you have, you to get to that short list of.
Because there is a desktop review that's done first. So when we are coming to recruitment, we invite the applications, which you need to have refereed. So you need somebody to sign, endorse your experience, etc. And that's a desktop analysis that's undone before you come forward.
So typically they're looking for experience of dispute resolution in whatever role, not necessarily as the adjudicator, but typically you'll have to produce anonymised decisions.
Yeah, and even they can be decisions as part of your diploma, etc. as well.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be unlikely, I would suggest, if you've not, I think at the minimum you'd have to have done a pupillage. I think if you've got experience of either because your company's been involved, or you've been a representative, or you've been an expert, I think that would help. So have you got any more? I mean, I know. There's one here.
It was mentioned that the CPR are now promoting the use of mediation from the courts for people to use it. And you mentioned yourself, Matt, that when you became an accredited mediator, it took around 9 or 10 years until you got your first gig.
8 years for my first paid gig. Did a couple of it. I did. To be fair, CEDR were really good. That you got allocated to observe.
Yeah.
And even now, when I get appointed through CEDR, I will be told who my observer is.
Okay.
The parties would have okayed them, but so typically it's, are you available, and this is your observer. going.
So is it still a case now that is the market saturated with mediators and people aren't getting appointed? So we mentioned self-promotion rather than just being a part of accredited mediators with CEDR or ICS and you being given the work. Is that a case of the market being saturated? That it wasn't as popular, but now it's coming through the ranks and being used a lot more. So is it on its head the other way?
There's probably, I think you probably look at it industry specific, might be a different answer to beyond construction, but.
If you are a full-time mediator and you're available to do mediations any time of the week, and you've got a broad practice, your chances are better of getting gigs. If you are got only one day when you can mediate and in any given month and you only work on one area, it's going to be more difficult. I mean, we run schemes for county courts, and certainly the Milton Keynes, Luton and Bedford asked us to set up a scheme specifically for small claim, I think also up to fast track construction disputes. I can't say that I've seen masses of cases coming through that, but that has changed because you mentioned the CPR changes. I mentioned Churchill orders, which I've seen a draft. They're going to roll that out to courts. That has to change the litigation roadmap. That must change the amount of opportunities there are. Well, I mean, it's going to apply to all types of cases. It applies through, multi-track cases as well. But it's going to change the way people run litigation. And I'd say, well, if you're in a court, you're much more likely to be a mediator than end up in a trial. So hopefully there will be more opportunities. But it's a competitive market. And I mentioned before, there's people who come from very senior positions in law firms and they think, I'm just going to be batting away appointments for mediators. And that's not the case. You've got to be visible. You've got to have a reputation which you can build up. I say to all the mediators, take gigs. It doesn't matter if it's like a couple £100. That's a law firm. They will have people there that will talk to people. You will build your reputation to get referrals that way.
And I think I think the RSCS have been involved with some courts in terms of party wall disputes and things like that. And I've certainly done some party wall mediations. I don't profess to know much about it, but it was an argument over a fence, and I did the mediation in someone's back room. And it
was going to say similarly. I think we've got a similar kind of court scheme, and I think Ciarb are involved in it as well, where judges are actually batting it out and saying go and try mediation.
I think special educational needs. There's sort of certain areas where they're crying out for mediators. I certainly say, and I put people in contact with Lawrence Cobb, for example. I know he's quite a lot of experience over. He was a senior construction lawyer, but he seems to have developed a little bit of a niche in that sort of special educational needs space. And I've pointed people to him to say, look, these people just want experience of mediating. So I think there's outside of the construction industry, I think there's opportunities. Likely that if you get paid, it might not be very much, but it's getting those stripes. So if you see it as an investment to get those numbers up, then I think it's worthwhile, and it can be rewarding. In terms of just it's very enjoyable. Although I've learned to not own the dispute as a mediator, it's very enjoyable when the parties do settle, and whether that's a construction industry matter or not, you still pat yourself on the back and feel a bit smug for a while, which is a nice feeling. You still beat yourself up if they don't settle, even if you're you've got thick skin. So how we do? I'm conscious of time. I don't want to keep you from drinks, and so if I'm not seeing any people, right, okay, yep.
Just taking it back slightly to the is it worth it question. We never really went anywhere tangibly with it in terms of, so just generally, would it be wise for us to assume that you're in for a minimum of 5 to 10 years before you see anything real back for yourself, if you will, in terms of financially? It will take you a minimum of 5 to 10 years to see any real benefit from.
I think there's probably a number of stages, you know, so if I'll give you my story, it's not necessarily typical, maybe Susan will share her story, but, you know, so 1997, I decided, yes, I want to do this. I got on the first panel in 2001, having done the law school route. I'd had a business, I've been running a business for 5 years of my own. And then I'd say it took about 5 to 6 years after that before I would say I was a full-time dispute resolver. And I think that's not necessarily usual. I think there's probably about a dozen individuals who are full-time dispute resolvers in the market. There's not a huge, I think the majority are people who are doing adjudication or mediation alongside other things. And so I think it's, I mean, the one thing I would say is that it's quite nice to be called young Matt at 55, but in the international arbitration world, that's young. So actually, if you've got your faculties and your health, it's not, you know, age isn't necessarily a disadvantage. But I think one thing I would say, just have that realistic, you know, expectation. I think do what you can when you've got the motivation, the energy to do it, but realise it's a long game. To be fair, when I started, I said, you know what, I fancy international arbitration. I went back and did a diploma in international arbitration. And then you know what happened? As soon as I enrolled, I got a gig as a presiding arbitrator. And I'm like, where did that come from? I learned more presiding something. But I thought, I've trained with domestic arbitration, not really done much of it, but I've circled back. And so I think, and even now, you know, I've now done an LLM relatively recently. Now I'm doing research and investment treaty arbitration. It's a journey that, you know, I'm invested in, and I think you've got to be interested in it. So yeah, it doesn't come quickly, and you know, I still think for me to break into international arbitration and arbitrate hard, and so I think that's something you know, and I've got experience, and I'm a full-time dispute resolver. I think that's a hard nut to crack, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Matt said about there are a limited number of people who make their living full-time as decision makers. Most people will combine it with working as an expert witness or consulting with various firms or working for a claims company. I did have somebody ask me that was interested in perhaps becoming an adjudicator what the salary was. That's not how it works. And even when you do get your name on the panel, when you do get work, as I've been through recently, when you issue your decision, you've still then got to get paid, which is not always easy. So if you're looking at it sort of financially, I think there's probably, yeah, if it's the money you're after, there are probably better ways of going about it. But from a point of view of achieving something and doing a fascinating job, it's great, but it's not an easy, it's not sort of like if I go and work for this firm for 10 years, at the end of it, I'll be earning 500,000. It's not that sort of route. There are people that make very good money out of it, admittedly, but it's a very small number. It's a bit like being a professional football player. You know, you not everyone plays for Chelsea, but the people that are in the lower divisions, they enjoy it as much and they're getting something from it. But, you know, to get that sort of salary, is it worth it financially? I think it is. But it's not going to be and it's going to take time, as Matt said, an effort to get there and get your name out there and get the appointments. So it's a lot of hard work. But again, if it's combining your primary profession with dispute resolution, it can, you know, I mean, I love it. I mean, I do enjoy it, you know, at the time it's hard, but I do enjoy it because I find it a fascinating process. But it's not, you know, I wouldn't look at it and say, great, here's my plan, here's my salary curve, and this is what I'm going to get. That's not how it works.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot of doing things you don't enjoy. You know, I didn't necessarily enjoy helping brickwork contractors out and scaffolding contractors out, but I did it. I didn't enjoy expert witness work, but I did it. If I look in a room of an arbitration, there's one arbitrator, maybe 3 arbitrators, but there's a lot of lawyers, there's a lot of experts, and there's a lot of people, even an expert, if you've got a lead expert who's a delay analyst or quantum, they'll have a support team around them. So there's more players in the dispute resolution community than just the dispute resolvers. And I think there's just the way I was told is that we went and had some chats with some lawyers, and they said, look, Matt, the reality is we're not going to appoint you as an expert. There's a couple of things to think, you just haven't got the track record. But there are things you can do. Be in contact with people who are doing expert work. Who needs somebody to prepare schedules and those types of things? And I think it's just sort of building up that sort of experience and exposure and being seen in a room. To say, oh, didn't I see you behind that expert who's being cross-examined and those types of things. So, I think it will be a different journey for everybody. And it's not easy, but it can be rewarding. So mentally and financially. But it's hard. I think I would say the majority, even on the RICS panel members, I think the average number of appointments are about 6 or 7 per member of that panel. So that's if that's all they're getting, unless they're sort of mega. It's not going to be their sole income, I would suggest. They may be getting from elsewhere, but generally, my experience of other panels is you might get 1 inquiry a year. And so I think the majority, it's that people who adjudicate might have a few, maybe a handful, maybe onto the second hand, but that's the majority. And I think there's other people who are on panels and they might get 1 every year. It's just something that they do. And so I think that's probably more representative. And then my experience of being a mediator and arbitrator came because I developed a track record in adjudication. So again, it's sort of that cross-fertilisation and then coming back and keeping up to date. And so the evaluative mediation, for example, I had a chat with Raj and she made me do the course. It was useful. Again, it was like, because it had been 20 years since I'd done the CEDR course. And I thought, it was actually really enjoyable. So I think it's a case of, it costs money, it takes time. Is it the investment worth it? I think it can be. I think you've got to look at it perhaps sort of holistically and just say, well, actually, it is continuing development. I can use these skills elsewhere. But I think going there with your eyes wide open and realise that, if you've either got financial support from somebody or you're prepared to invest. I think it's not, the tap doesn't come, just switch on. I think that, there's people in this room, and hopefully I can see some people who've shadowed me who are now practising, done the diplomas, and he's too shy, but he's in the back row on the left. His name's called, there's a couple there. So I just think, there are people here afterwards. Go and have a chat with them. And I'll just say there's 2 people in the back row there. And actually, there's one before who I think was the first female adjudicator on the ICE panel. But speak to them about how hard it was. And Debbie's probably a good example. And then an example of the fact that she had to be a fellow first to get on. And it's generally at that stage of your career. So, I think it's clearly doable, but it ain't easy. But do I regret spending any of the money on the courses? No, not at all. But I was perhaps in a fortunate position. But if you can do it, or you can get some financial support from your employer or whatever, I think I'd say do it. I think you'll bring something more to your organisation as well. I think having that exposure, and you might actually just learn. Actually, no way do I want to do that, because there are some. It's not all roses. It can be quite stressful. You can get, you can go to events and not be able to talk to. There's a Society of Construction Law lunch on Friday. I can't speak to half the room. There's 1,800 people there. So it's just, but those sort of things where you have to keep your distance from people and being down on the, having some social life, you do sort of miss out from that. And that's fine, because I like my own company, thankfully. But I think there's those sort of things where things to think about. It might not be for you, but there comes a point where it's just like, okay.
The lawyer answer is it depends.
Debbie, yeah.
Just add one thing to that as well, people. I was one of Matt's mentees a few years ago now and everything. But one of the things you do need to look at yourself and look at yourself in the mirror and ask the question, can I work completely alone? So you do have, you will be, well, at the ICC you get allocated a mentor when you get onto the panel. So it is somebody that you can speak to in confidence. Obviously you have to keep the parties anonymous, but you say party A, can I have some advice? I'm not quite sure how to deal with this. But actually most of the time you are working alone when you're an adjudicator. You're in your office and you're ploughing through documents and you are making that decision by yourself. So if you're not the sort of person who likes their own company, then actually it can be
It can be lonely.
Especially when you've got parties actually, digging at you.
And they will be. There are keyboard warriors are plenty, and especially if they think you're green, they will have a go. And I see some of the stuff, especially some of the newer, people they will try things. And to be fair, you'll get caught in it even if you're more experienced, and you learn to sort of deal with it, but it's still not particularly pleasant.
I remember walking into a room at a networking event or a social event, and somebody sort of looked at my name badge and looked down and went, I recognise that name. You decided against me in an adjudication and started having a go at me. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I think I better turn around and leave. So you will get that. But at the end of the day, as I say, it's once you've done it, and if you enjoy it and you find it fascinating, then, you can't see yourself doing anything else. But you do have to have a certain mindset that at the end of the day, nobody's going to love an adjudicator. Either party is going to find something wrong with your decision. So, you've got to have that sort of thickness of skin that you as long as you're satisfied in yourself, you've done a good job, you've done the best you can, you've made a decision, and that's it. And every adjudicator I speak to, they always say the same thing. Well, as soon as I've finished it, I forget about it. And that's what you have to do, because, that's part of the job.
And there's the flip side as well. You end up becoming paranoid because people say nice things to you because they think they're going to be in front of you. So you don't trust anybody, and it's just like, it's an awful. So you got people blowing smoke up, where they would blow smoke if they wanted to curry favour, and you go, do they really say that? Oh, you're brilliant. Of course, you're not like all the other nutters. Oh, right, okay, can you really like? Really, and then the others who can be quite aggressive, and like say they get carried away on a keyboard on a Friday night and off it goes. It's just like that decision's bonkers. And it's just and worse, and people don't like what you do, and it's but it's still. I think I'd like to think there is a support network out there, but it's not. I say I do occasionally. You speak to Mrs. Malloy about whether I sleep through the night every night, and I think she'll tell you that. Who's that fella you're talking about? But anyway, but no. So I think it's just I think it can be stressful, it can be enjoyable, but it's not easy, okay, right. So I think I've enjoyed it, but maybe that's a bit self-indulgent. It's not really about me. Thank the panel, please. So with CIC, we've got members. We rely on other organisations to collaborate, particularly this evening, CEDR and the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. I'm not downplaying the members because they've obviously had a significant contribution, but please thank them for giving up the time and stay. Enjoy it. So I understand we've got drinks and refreshments. You'll all be emailed afterwards with some resource links to the various organisations in terms of the training. Adjudication Society have done a very good document in terms of what happens with the adjudication space. I think there's some other information in terms of mediation and arbitration. So it's there. Hopefully, these things change. I know the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators are going through an educational reform review, so keep yourself up to date, but just sort of think what's the most time efficient way to perhaps to suit my lifestyle and pursue. But hopefully you've enjoyed it, so if you've enjoyed it, tell everyone on social media how great it was, which is always good, and tag all these people as well. Okay. Great. Thank you. Cheers.